I would say is that a lot of people think that these schools are like a little progressive. They do not understand that they are explicitly teaching anti-Semitic lessons. They are
Yeah.
teaching your children to hate Jews.
Well, but not just Jews, also America, police, corporations,
And
jobs.
one place that people are demanding a permanent ceasefire is in Palestine because they are being occupied or controlled by a made up place called Israel that has settlers called Zionists who
Oh,
are harming and killing Palestinian people who have always lived on the land. He said he questioned the trainer who used the phrasing, quote, so called United States, end quote.
oh,
Woke kindergarten prides itself on inventing a new pedagogy that advocates gender confusion, kid protesting, so going to protests, as you mentioned,
yeah.
the eradication of borders, as well as, quote, pro black and queer trans liberation, end quote. One section of the website said it wants to help kids become, quote unquote, little comrades. District officials defended the program this past week, saying that woke kindergarten did what it was hired to do. The district pointed to that the school was no longer on a state watch list, only to learn from the Chronicle, the people who are writing this, that the school was not only still on the watch list, but had dropped to a lower level.
Oh, dear.
Would you like to know more?
Hello, Simone. Today we are going to be talking about something that a fan shared with me. They were
I
like,
thought it was
a
a
joke.
complete prank. So our fan sends us some links. The first link is a link to an organization's website, and I look at it and I'm like,
You're like, this
no,
is a janky website. It
it's a
can't
joke. It's
possibly be.
clearly a
Yeah,
joke
and it was
about
called
wokeness.
Woke Kindergarten. Like, it even
Mhm.
sounds like a janky, like, fake thing, right? So,
Yeah.
I went
But
into this.
everyone should check it out. You'll see immediately what I mean. Go to wokekindergarten.org. This is the first link he sends. But
Well, I'll
then
put it on the screen.
he sends additional links about news coverage about this. And oh, it's receiving money. And it's
Lots of money. And in both the New York, so it's been implemented in both New York and San Francisco, but the different news coverage we have of this discuss its differential implementation in these two areas. So let's just go straight into the news coverage.
oh
But,
boy.
by the way, the woman who runs this, God knows if I'm misgendering them. They're what we used to call a woman. Okay, whatever the gender they identify as. They look
Probably a
like
uterus haver. Yeah, something along those
they're a
lines.
uterus haver of some variety. Anyway, purple hair. And it's like, okay, I see what this is about. Okay, anyway, so here it says, so I'm quoting from an article on this, okay? A Hayward elementary school struggling to boost low test scores and dismal student attendance is spending $250,000 in federal money for an organization called Woke Kindergarten to train teachers to confront white supremacy, disrupt racism and oppression, and remove those barriers to learning. District officials defended the program this past week, saying that Woke Kindergarten did what it was hired to do. The district pointed to improvements in attendance and suspension rates, and that the school was no longer on a state watch list, only to learn from the Chronicle, the people who are writing this, that the school was not only still on the watch list, but had dropped to a lower level.
Oh dear.
So this is the thing. So it made things worse objectively, and yet the people who were supposed to be monitoring this, who should have known that it made things worse, that it hadn't gotten off these watch lists, that it had actually dropped to a higher level of extremism on the watch list, seem to be unaware of this. They're just like, we did the woke thing and now it's fixed.
Yeah,
Now,
well, and I think that's the story that we're told about woke policy in general is just do this thing and it's going to be okay, which is
yeah,
really not how that plays out.
So the school community, including parents, teachers, and staff, identified a provider to help them do so, Raymond said. He noted a subsequent improvement in student attendance, with 44% of students considered chronically absent last year, down 61% from the year prior. Unfortunately, this is a similar improvement that was seen district-wide, including the districts that didn't implement this program. And I will point out, it did functionally make things worse. But 2 years into the 3-year contract with Woke Kindergarten, a for-profit company, student achievement at Glassbrook has fallen, prompting some teachers to question whether the money was well spent given the needs of the student, who are predominantly low income. 2/3 of the students are English learners, and more than 80% are Hispanic Latino. And I think this is the real tragedy here. This is not a community that is Black. This is not a community that is woke. These are new immigrants trying to learn and adopt to American culture, having their children brainwashed. And people who know Latin Americans are not woke. These kids are going to grow up to hate their family, because that's what happens. If you brainwash one of these kids into wokeness and they grow up in a traditionalist family, they're going to end up hating their family. So these kids who are growing up, coming over here, the parents think they're saving their kids and they think that they are providing them a good future. And yet they are going to be brainwashed, castrated, and march through the streets in triumphs that supersede the gaudiness of even Rome's triumphs over the conquered lesser nearby tribes. The genuine horror of what's going on here, and that they're building this racial hierarchy in this program. And you'll see this as we go on. It's run by a Black woman, and she's talking about how Blacks are better.
Actually, they, them, Malcolm.
They, them. Well, we don't know that. I'm just assuming.
No, I'm on the about page of wokekindergarten.org.
Right? Okay. Black non-binary.
Don't misgender, Malcolm.
Oh, yeah. I got to always know their gender. Anyway, so they're going into these school districts, right? And teaching people who aren't even Black. Like, if it was about like uplifting Black kids, that would be one thing. No, they're teaching recent Hispanic immigrants that her and people who look like her are racially superior to them, which is grotesque. I cannot believe this is happening in the United States, and that people like this are not being treated like the racial supremacists they are.
Well, it's a lot of money to be paid, but I'm also just really impressed by this website, and that people are looking at this website and saying, you know what? I should hire her and pay her a lot of money. I'm looking at the menu now. There's woke wonderings, woke word of the day, woke read alouds, little comrade convos, teach Palestine.
Little comrades is what they call the kids, by the way.
Yeah. What's under teach Palestine? Oh, so you made it to a protest, a sensory guide for kids, and Free Palestine, a visual history instazine for kids.
Sorry, what were you?
This is just so wild. Like, I was so sure that this was not.
Do you want me to read to you what they say about Palestine? So this is in their lectures. One place that people are demanding a permanent ceasefire is in Palestine, because they are being occupied or controlled by a made-up place called Israel that has settlers called Zionists who are harming and killing Palestinian people who have always lived on the land.
Huh. Okay.
Israel is a made-up place lived in by people called Zionists, and the Palestinians. By the way, just so people know, the Palestinians have not always lived in that area. They're so specifically in Gaza. Not all Palestinians. There's multiple ethnic groups within the Palestinian population, but the people who live within Gaza are a Turkic ethnic group and a relative newcomer. They have not always lived on the land.
The ones who are not of this ethnic group are of the Arab ethnic group. They are certainly not of the ancient Philistine or Canaanite groups which originally lived in this region. But what we do know is, in part, a chagrin to the modern Jews, given their religious history on this note. Ancient Jewish populations were about 50% Canaanite, which were the people in the region before the Jews arrived, or the early Jews arrived. So, yeah, actually, the Jews have the best claim to being the original inhabitants of this area.
What? Like just the fantasy in all of this. Israel is a made-up place, and this is being taught to kindergarteners, paid for by United States federal spending. Okay? I want to be clear to people. We can get to the Wheels on the Bus Palestine song. Okay, well, we'll do this right here. One lesson the firm developed after Hamas's brutal October invasion of Israel imagined the children's song, quote, "The Wheels on the Bus," end quotes, into a Palestinian resistance poem titled, quote, "The Wheels on the Tank," end quote.
Oh, no. No.
The wheels on the tank go round and round all through the town. The people in the town, they hold their ground and never back down. The bombs in the air go whoosh, whoosh, whoosh all through the skies. From every river to every sea, the people cry, cry, cry. Oh, just from every river to every.
This is not going well with the song. She's not writing well for the song. I'm not okay with this.
And then Woke kindergarten advertises kid-friendly language that discredits Israel as a, quote, made-up place, end quote, that has, quote, settlers called Zionists who are harming and killing Palestinian people, end quote. The New York Post noted, beyond peddling anti-Israeli activism, woke kindergarten prides itself on inventing a new pedagogy that advocates gender confusion, kid protesting, so going to protests, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
the eradication of borders, as well as, quote, pro-Black and queer trans liberation, end quote. One section of the website said it wants to help kids become, quote unquote, little comrades, as Simone already read to you.
Yeah. The founder has a little mascot, which I think is the mascot guiding these conversations. He introduces himself on the website as Little Power, which is the founder's inner child.
Is it a black man? Is that the
It's
one?
a little black chibi boy. He's super cute. I mean, I like her look too. It's not purple hair, it's pink hair. You know, it's great. But like the things I feel, and we were talking about this morning, I feel like she has to be riffing on the worst stereotypes of a woke person and realizing that it's monetizable, clearly, but like she is not. You know, we recently interviewed Tracy Woodgrains, and he was talking about how, you know, if he had to ultimately choose a party and not be a centrist, he would choose the Democratic Party because
I think he shows that he's just not aware of what the party's doing, or he hasn't accepted yet. Like, he seemed like somebody who was still in a cult and was trying to break from it, and I think he eventually will, because I don't think he recognizes. Like, he seemed pretty shocked by the 45% of gay men voted for Trump statistic, because I think that, well, he said some stuff that just wasn't true. He's like that the Republican Party is advocating against his interests as a gay man, and there's just not a lot of
interested in surrogacy. Well, because you do hear that, and I think what is happening that may be causing polarization to become worse.
Live in Alabama, okay?
I know, but hold on, hear me out here, because we were talking this morning before we did any podcast recordings about how the war against woke is in full swing, and it has been, the resistance has been in full swing for multiple years. And you can hear from different types of groups on both sides that yes, there is pushback now, but rather than the woke movement kind of stepping down or ebbing in some way, they're just ossifying and becoming more entrenched in their positions. And it seems to me that what we're seeing is just a very ossified and extremified polarization. But what I feel like when I'm looking at wokekindergarten.org and Key, it's what the founder calls themselves.
Well, no, I mean, I think this is no different from the Republicans who like don't know that like actually Republicans aren't racist. And so they adopt
like Nick Fuentes, who like doesn't really, he calls himself, you know, a Catholic and stuff, but he doesn't represent any kind of even extreme Catholics that we know. He's a parody. He represents a parody, and she represents a parody.
A progressive parody. They represent. It doesn't represent any real Catholic I have ever met.
Yeah.
And I have met many conservative Catholics. They do not act or think like he does.
Well, and Key, the founder of Woke Kindergarten, does not represent any real person that we've met who's very progressive. And we've been in very progressive cultures many times.
I mean, he takes on these like racist, mostly Hispanic positions, and it's like, bro, they're Catholics too, you nut job. Like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot advocate for a worldwide Catholic government and then say, but we can't have more Catholics in our own country. That would mess things up. Like, it doesn't work, because it's a caricature that he learned from watching progressive caricatures of Republicans and then adopting that. And I do think that you're right, that many ultra wokeists have begun to adopt the caricatures the Republicans were making of wokeism.
But here's my question. Why? I mean, they're doing it because they're getting
they live in online environments and they think they can gain status by doing that.
Well, but why? No. Listen, why are they gaining status? That's what I don't understand. Like, they're doing it because they're getting reinforced.
Okay, so hold on. In conservative circles, a lot of these people are marginalized. Okay, so like people like Nick Fuentes, like conservatives, we don't hire these people. When was the last time you heard of Nick Fuentes, right? Like, so these individuals are successfully marginalized within conservative circles. The problem within progressive circles, and this is part of the problem of woke, is that you are not allowed to, within progressive circles, marginalize someone for too strictly following the orders of the woke religion. this is, I think, where we learn the core weakness of the progressive movement was Gamergate and Gamergate 2, because you pointed out to me, you're like, how can they defend these actions when they are so obviously reprehensible? Like, they are so obviously the losers in this. And you see this across the progressive, you in the progressive religion cannot impugn someone or for too strictly following orders, basically for too strictly interpreting the regulations. And this is why they keep standing stupid points that they should know if they were being tactful about this to back down from. Like, trans people in sports is an obviously dumb point, and yet they push it, right?
Well, and on the right, completely banning abortion is going to kill.
Well, no, this is something that actually wasn't pushed by the base of the right and was not even pushed by right politicians.
Yeah.
This was done at the Supreme Court, okay?
But what I'm saying is, within the Republican Party, at least leading up to this, no one could question that. No one could be like, actually, I think reproductive choice is kind of a good idea. It's a similar dynamic.
Well, that
right?
Not really at all.
How?
Because it was a difference between a bottom up and a top down thing. Many people on the right did question like the abortion stuff. So like if you ask something like
I didn't see that
before Roe v. Wade, for example, because there's two things here that you are misunderstanding. They're thinking Roe v. Wade was an unconstitutional decision, which it obviously was.
Yeah.
Okay. So people could ask someone like Trump or us, are you against Roe v. Wade? And we would have said, yes, we're against Roe v. Wade because it was obviously unconstitutional. But that's very different than saying, well, would you at a state level impose a total restriction on all abortions? And this is where Republicans got away with this for a long time. And now things are coming home to roost. But I think, within the Republican Party, the group that actually, like even you as a candidate want abortions to be stricter in the legal system than they are now. Like you think that Pennsylvania's laws have abortions happening too late, right?
Yeah. And for context, everyone, that's 23 weeks is pretty late.
It's insanely late
for abortions. You've got a little person in there at that point. It's really hard to say it's not. Now, of course, I mean, I think that just to put it out there, we hold the same general views that most Europeans and Americans hold when you look at polling and when you look at least what European laws have been implemented, which is to say basically like, first 20 weeks, don't really worry about it. After that point, it should probably be for a pretty strong medical reason that you have an abortion. For example, the mother is at risk, the baby is almost certainly going to die or have a very painful death shortly after being born, etc. And that is what most people hold. So I'm just, in terms of our stance in Pennsylvania, just people being like, 23 weeks, I feel like I'm not into this is not really within that realm.
Are forced to hold these insane positions when they're really not. Republicans don't hold these insane, major Republican thought leaders don't hold these insane positions all the time. But with progressives, they can't do this. They always must elevate every insane thing. We actually saw this with BLM as well, that the figures they kept basing things around, like Trayvon Martin and stuff like that. Like these or George Floyd, these were like, George Floyd was a scumbag of a human being. Beating women, stuff like that. These were individuals who they should have known. And there were Black individuals who were unjustly put in difficult positions around the time of BLM. Okay. But they did not choose to elevate those people. They chose to elevate the people the Republicans were attacking them for, because that's how they chose their martyrs, which led to them choosing really bad martyrs. As I've said with the trans kids, you got the same thing. As I've said with Gamergate. And this is how you cause progressives to lose, is you call out a progressive loudly and publicly for going too far with their progressivism in a progressive approved way. And that's how you get that shit elevated. That's how you get that shit out into the public. And then you can use that for a big fight and lose a bunch of progressive sentiment towards the progressive party. Okay. But to get back to the article here, the woke kindergarten curriculum shared with schools includes quote unquote wonderings, which pose questions for students, including, quote, if the United States defunded the Israeli military, how could this money be used to rebuild Palestine, end quote? I love the idea of not just not giving the Israeli military more money, but us imposing, basically attacking and imposing a defunding of the Israeli military. Sorry. In addition here, quote, woke word of the day, end quote, including strike, ceasefire and protests, offer students a, quote, language of resistance to introduce children to liberatory vocabulary in a way that they can easily digest, understand, and most importantly, use in their critiques of the system, end quote. Keep in mind, these are little kids where 80% struggle with English as a language. Oh, no, it wasn't 80%. It was 2/3 of the students are English learners.
Well,
right?
one of her 6 words of the day is in Spanish. So at least there's that. She's, I remember what words of the day. It's manifestas. Oh, what is this? It is a manifestación, to demonstrate that we are not in agreement with something and to take action to fight it.
Okay, so
she does do some Spanish stuff. Okay, hear her out here.
Teacher Tiger Craven Neely said he supports discussing racism in the classroom, but found the woke kindergarten training confusing and rigid. He said he was told a primary objective was to, quote unquote, disrupt whiteness in the school, and that the sessions were, quote, not a place to express white guilt, end quote. He said he questioned the trainer who used the phrasing, quote, so-called United States, end quote.
So-called.
As well as lessons available on the organization's website offering little comrade convos, or posting a word or positing a world without police, money, or landlords. Craven Neely, who is white and a self-described gay moderate, said he wasn't trying to be difficult when he asked for clarification about disrupting whiteness. Quote, what does it mean? End quote. He said, adding the question got him at least temporarily banned from future training sessions.
Okay.
I just want to know, what does it mean for a 3rd grade classroom, he says. Another Glassbrook teacher said woke kindergarten offered one perspective on issues and that there was no tolerance for questions. Quote, it slowly became apparent if you were a dissenting voice, that was not what they wanted to hear, end quote, said the teacher, who requested anonymity for fear of pushback from the school. So what you see here is just total, like, no dissent, no questions, no anything. And, you know, I can go to a different article here, which is gross in woke kindergarten previously hit headlines when a school district in Virginia posted and deleted information on their website telling students to listen to an audiobook by Gross, suggesting that they should not feel safe around police. Oh, no. They're teaching Hispanic immigrant children not to feel safe around police. Towards the end of the video, they said, quote, I feel safe when there are no police, end quote. The next clip was a video series titled Woke Read Aloud. They say easy as ABC. There are so many different pronouns, they read. Just like the alphabet, so many different pronouns.
What's interesting too is that, like, one of the woke words of the day is to unionize, that this is just so broadly against any form of...
Hold on, and you might think that these are like same pronouns. The kid Diego likes to be called a tree, Gross added.
Oh, tree pronouns.
Tree pronouns they're pushing on kindergartners. Clouds
and self and...
Yeah, no, and I think that this is the thing, and this is what always gets me. It's people are like, well, I'm not one of those crazy progressives. And it's like, if you're in rural Alabama and you're a moderate and you vote for progressives, I'm all about that, whatever, right? Okay. But if you're in like Austin and you're voting for progressives, this is what you're advocating. If you are in a major city, Dallas or something, and you're voting for progressives, or in a rural progressive leaning area, like, you know, suburban New York or suburban Pennsylvania, this is what you're elevating. So there are circumstances in which you shouldn't be elevating this type of stuff. But when you are justifying why you are a progressive based on what's happening in Alabama and you are in New York, no, because that's not what you're elevating. You're elevating this nonsense, okay? And this hurts kids, and it specifically hurts the most disadvantaged kids whose parents can't afford to pull them out of these systems. That's why you're getting 80% Hispanic immigrants in these environments.
Yeah, this does worry me. Yeah, that parents would sacrifice a lot to move to the United States and go through a lot. It's so hard to immigrate. And then, of course, you send your kid to a public school because you can't afford anything else and you have to work. And then suddenly your kids are they hate the United States. So everything you worked so hard to get.
In the US, they are a racial underclass.
Well,
because
and
they're
they
not.
also learn to hate the US, to hate the police, to hate organizations. So they're probably not going to want to get a job because they should be unionizing and fighting structures of power. They're not going to feel comfortable around policemen. It is scary. It's sad, and it's frustrating that school districts would decide this is a good way to
I
spend
just
their
can't
money.
imagine the families who sacrifice so much. You know, we know so many Hispanic immigrant families who sacrifice so much to come here to give their kids a better life. And these programs are going to convince these kids to hate their parents. They're going to convince them to hate them because they're misgendering them. They're going to convince them to hate them because they're not approving of the nonsense that they want to do. You know, these parents want grandkids. They don't want their kids, you know, going through all of this.
Yeah. And what's sad is running for office in Pennsylvania, we're talking with a lot of different parent groups and parents who are deeply concerned about what's going on in their schools. And there's obviously a lot of variation. Not every school is implementing woke kindergarten up, and that's a good thing. But every parent that we've spoken with that's really concerned is starting to give up in a way that I find to be telling. At least it's something we should be thinking about, because they've stopped even bothering going to school board meetings. Why? It's getting to the point where if you go to a school board meeting and you question any of this, there are parents who will dox you, essentially, and contact your employers and say, did you know this person doesn't believe in this, doesn't believe in that, you should fire them. This is happening.
Oh, it's worse than that. So in our district, they did this. They put on a banned list, a restaurant that specializes in hiring disabled people and the mentally handicapped and was run by a nonprofit. And they doxed and tried to shut down this restaurant because one of the people who was an executive at it happened to be concerned about what the school was doing. These people are evil.
These parents are basically being trained. I cannot influence my school district, and I cannot have my child in this school district. So they're just taking their kids out entirely. To a great extent, they're putting them in homeschool environments because,
that's why we've got to get our system developed. We're so close, Simone.
I know. We've really got to get the Collins Institute off the ground, because also private schools are subject to a lot of these same pressures. And the teachers who and administrators who run them are often doing exactly the same stuff that you're finding in public schools. So it's scary to me, because a lot of parents now are basically, if you're fortunate enough to not depend on, you know, a public school for food security, for a safe place for your kid to be out day, and for education. So if you're lucky enough to be able to homeschool your kid, you're literally just opting out of the system. And then that kind of abandons a bunch of people who don't have the time to fight for something better, to a system that is ultimately making their kids turn against them, making their kids also turn against, I would say, mindsets that enable them to thrive in society. Because everything that I'm looking at on this website is going to teach an external locus of control. It's going to teach a sense of victimization. It elevates victimhood status. And it all the language here is very much of a mindset where your job is to get other people to do things for you. It's not about doing anything yourself. It's not about building anything yourself.
Yeah, nothing is about building. It's all about other people giving you stuff.
Yeah, or doing stuff like, you know, oh, well, get the U.S. government to give a bunch of money. I mean,
keep in mind, the founder of this is probably a millionaire by now off of grifting, you know,
considering how much they have made. They've made a lot. And that also surprises me. I mean, we have a business that has attempted to sell to educational institutions, to universities, to the government. We go through a very rigorous RFP process. We bend over backward, and we only win RFPs because we charge the lowest rates. And, you know, we're often losing money when working with government clients. I really don't understand how an organization like this. Oh, you know what? I do, actually. Because when we apply to RFPs, we always have the option to check whether we are a woman-owned business, a minority-owned business, a disabled veteran-owned business. So I guess what's happening, and the reason why they are making so much money, that is to say, Key, the founder of Woke Kindergarten, is making so much money, is that they are able to assume all these special statuses that enable them to get through that process. I guess it disturbs me. It's very frustrating.
What I would say is that a lot of people think that these schools are like a little progressive. They do not understand that they are explicitly teaching anti-Semitic lessons. They are
Yeah.
teaching your children to hate Jews.
Well, but not just Jews, also America, police, corporations, jobs.
Yeah, but I think that this is
working.
the one area where even moderate Democrats realize that they're really crossing a line. But you've got to remember that this is coming from the Black community, where something, I think it was a study done.
I went to check the study after recording to make sure I didn't speak out of turn here, and the rates of anti-Semitism in the Black community in the United States are around 30% compared to around 12% in the white community. So you're looking at a little less than 3 times the rate of anti-Semitism in the Black community than in the white community.
So when you see things like Kanye,
Well, isn't that because of the Nation of Islam, though?
it is, but you're forgetting how much influence stuff like that has on the ultra progressives. And this is the culture that they're coming out of, that has these extremist beliefs about Jews, which are interesting in that they are actually more anti-Semitic than even Nazi beliefs about Jews.
Right. Yeah.
Like Nazis just thought that Jews were like inferior and to blame for them losing.
You were like,
the
or they
war.
were corrupt and they had all the money, whereas
They
like,
didn't think like the stuff. We could do a whole episode on the Nation of Islam and what.
yeah, man. Oh
It's
man,
like
when I
totally
finally
different.
read the belief system, and that is some intense stuff.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Yeah, it's out there. It's wackadoo. Anyway, love you, Simone. This has been fantastic.
I love you too. Pizza tonight?
I'd love that.
Okay. It can't be in the wrong order, Malcolm. I've seen the comments. I know.
I love you
I
to
was
death.
eating meatballs earlier.
We're doing meatballs?
Were you eating meatballs?
Oh, yes. Toasty calls the little cheese balls that we have. This is how you know somebody's a parent, right? Because they'll eat snacks that no one who isn't a parent would have in their house. But parents, we have these types of snacks. And they are delicious. Cheesy poofs, as Cartman calls them.
Yeah, except that our children insist on calling them meatballs. And at first I kept trying to serve them meatballs when they asked me for meatballs. Little did I know that someone had upstairs a stash of cheesy poofs. And
Yep.
now I have to teach the boys the difference between a meatball and a real meatball, which is very difficult. So that's on
So-
you.